In the ink is the truth, the Redford residence. The year was 1956, and though the world around her seemed to lurch into the future with all the ferocity of a new age, Eloise preferred to linger in the quiet shadows of her family's estate. The manor, grand house of stone and ivy, still held the echoes of generations past, whispers of a time when her family's surname carried weight, and their library, filled with books on philosophy, history, and poetry, was their most valuable treasure. The estate, a shadow of its former grandeur, was filled with relics of a world that had long since passed, wooden shelves stacked high with leather-bound books, faded portraits of ancestors whose names no one remembered. Eloise had not been born for grandeur or titles. She had been born with words in her heart, and a love for the opera that her mother, still an elegant woman in her mid-50s, considered a relic of the past. Every evening, after the sun had dipped below the rolling hills, Eloise would sit at the grand piano in the salon, fingers poised over the ivory keys, while the distant strains of Verdi or Puccini seemed to swirl in the air. The family's servants would often shake their heads at the sight a young woman, just 24, who could command a sonnet as easily as a waltz, but who had no clear place in the world of her time. She was neither an aristocrat to be married off for political gain nor an artist without a cause. Her quill scratched across the page as she wrote, not the stories the world might expect from her, but the ones that sang in her soul, tales of forgotten heroines, tragedies that weren't sung in the grand halls, and worlds where women like her could write their own destinies. But soon, she would have to decide. To live a life of silence and tradition, or to speak out in the only way she knew how, with her pen. And while Eloise, deep in thought, looked out the tall windows of the magnificent building of her ancestors and her family dreamed of distant landscapes, like the wide vineyards or olive groves in Italy, she was pulled from these fascinatingly vague and wandering thoughts by a muffled knock on the heavy ebony door. "Miss Eloise, is it free?" Nanny said. "May I come in?" governess softly asked. Behind the heavy ebony door were the nanny and old governess. They clicked their heels, waiting for Eloise to open the door for them. Eloise answered, "Of course, come in. Your father and mother are waiting for you. The dining table has been arranged. Have you forgotten that the Richard Thornton is coming to dinner tonight? You haven't got ready yet." Oh, we must hurry," said, in an exciting and concerned tone, Eloise's nanny. Eloise's nanny had devoted her entire life to Eloise. She had come to their family as a trainee in the law office of City Judge Wilson. However, by chance, she had remained to work and live in Eloise's parents' house. They started heating the water in the gilded-rimmed tub, while the nanny and housekeeper hurriedly prepared a dress for Miss Eloise. A beautiful green dress with beautifully cut sleeves and hems, made in the finest tailoring salon modeled after Coco Chanel, evening gowns with structure. Old Lady combed Eloise's long blonde hair, with tones like the most beautiful sunset. The young girl's eyes sparkled like two blue lakes hidden under the canopy of dense trees. With 2 drops of French and very sophisticated perfume, the girl was ready for the long-awaited dinner with her future fiancé. With very nervous and quick movements, she threw her scarf over her shoulders, shook herself slightly and turned to the 2 ladies. Eloise asked, "How do I look?" "Like the most beautiful angel," Nanny spoke with admiration. With tears in her eyes, she supported her, because the woman considered Eloise as her own daughter. Although Eloise knew Richard, they had spent their childhood together, playing in the courtyard of her and his mansions, never actually exchanging any acts of tenderness, except for a kiss at lunchtime. Her parents would not have given her to another suitor because their parents were not only friends, but also associates. Like most marriages of that time, this one had been arranged long ago. Yes, these 2 people were an unimaginably harmonious and beautiful couple. She was really impatient to get down. She knew that this was the night of the engagement. Her happiness seemed endless. Ring fits perfectly. Upon entering the dining saloon, one is immediately enveloped by an air of dignified grandeur. The room's proportions are commanding, with high ceilings adorned by intricate plasterwork, a delicate frieze of acanthus leaves or heraldic motifs, casting a soft, diffused light that dances across the space. The floor is a masterpiece in itself, often laid with polished parquet or inlaid marble, its gleaming surface reflecting the opulence of the surroundings. Walls are typically paneled in rich woods like oak or mahogany, their dark tones providing a striking contrast to the lighter hues of the ceiling and floor. At the heart of the room stands a monumental refectory table, its elongated form crafted from solid walnut or oak, supported by sturdy trestle legs. Surrounding it, a set of matching chairs in style boast carved details and upholstered seats in luxurious fabrics like damask or velvet. Above, a grand chandelier hangs from the center of the ceiling, its crystal prisms catching the light and reflections across the room. The walls are adorned with tapestries or oil paintings, often depicting pastoral scenes or historical events, framed in dark wood frames that complement the room's overall aesthetic. A buffet table runs along one wall, displaying fine china, silver candelabras, and crystal decanters. The presence of a wine cooler, a giant one reminiscent of those found in grand estates, hints at the room's purpose for lavish banquets and intimate gatherings alike. The atmosphere is one of restrained elegance, where every element, from the choice of materials to the arrangement of furniture, speaks to a legacy of refinement and noble lineage. In the heart of the noble residence stood a grand black piano, its polished ebony surface gleaming beneath the soft glow of the chandelier. The instrument, with its elegant curves and gleaming keys, commanded attention in the living room, which was adorned with rich tapestries and antique furniture. Adjacent to this space, the dining room lay open, and its long mahogany table set for an evening gathering. The piano's presence was more than just decorative, it was a testament to the family's refined taste and cultural heritage. Its keys, though seldom touched, whispered tales and intimate gatherings. The gentle hum of a distant conversation from the dining room blended with the subtle resonance of the piano, creating an atmosphere of timeless elegance. The guests had already arrived in the salon. The Richard with his parents. This 28-year-old young man was more than just an excellent and highly desirable opportunity, the dream of almost every young bride. The Richard stood by the large dining table, imposing yet graceful. Dressed in a dark blue tuxedo, its satin lapels sparkling under the crystal chandelier, he was the epitome of post-war elegance. His trousers, the same color. His black silk bow tie was perfectly tied. The dark-haired young man, with simple but very striking facial features, gave the impression of a very determined and educated young man. He was impatiently waiting for his future bride. While the butler and chef prepared a bottle of the best French wine, the guests happily exchanged stories about the post-war period and the country's economy. At that moment, from the second floor of the magnificent house, loud chatter was heard between two women and young Miss Eloise. A young lady and her entourage descended the grand staircase, covered with red carpets of the finest weave. The dining room was bathed in the soft glow of candlelight. On the polished mahogany table were delicate porcelain plates, each setting arranged with gleaming silverware and crystal glassware. The air was rich with the mingling aromas of a more delicious appetizer, main course and dessert, freshly baked bread, and the subtle fragrance of the most sophisticated perfume and the scent of beautiful flower bouquet arrangements. "Good evening, Miss Eloise," young man and his parents greeted her warmly. "Eloise, dear, you are indeed late," Eloise's mother said in a gentle but worried tone. "Forgive me, dear lady, we are a little late," ladies apologized. "It was worth the wait," Richard said fondly. We know," said the master of the house, Eloise's father, Sir Wilson Redford. "Good evening, my respect," Eloise spoke gently, as only she knows how. "Let's have a sit, welcome our dear friends," Wilson welcomed. "Guests, future family." The guests greeted the girl and her entourage and sat down at a large, tastefully furnished table. The dinner went off without a hitch. The guests greeted the girl and her entourage and sat down at a large, tastefully furnished table. The dinner went off without a hitch. The guests were delighted and made it clear with their compliments to the head chef and hostess. At one point, after very nervous hours, Richard decided to speak out about the reason for his arrival. Although the Richard was actually a very brave young man, when it came to his love life, he was not the most skilled. This stemmed from his strict, but very fair, traditional upbringing. Richard was not the type of young man who would walk around and visit ladies of dubious morals. He was more interested in opera and beautiful arias, the theater, and all those characters that come from behind the scenes delighted this seemingly not-so-emotional young man. He looked forward to meetings with his fiancée more than the end of the war. The evening had unfolded with the warmth of family and the elegance of Eloise's dining room, but as the final course was served, a subtle shift in the atmosphere signaled a new chapter. The Richard's gaze, once content amidst the familial chatter, now rested solely on Eloise. His heart raced with anticipation, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. With a deliberate calmness, the Richard approached Eloise, his movements graceful yet purposeful. He reached into his breast pocket and withdrew a small, velvet-lined box. The room seemed to hold its breath as he knelt before her, the box opening to reveal a radiant diamond ring, its facets catching the candlelight and scattering it like 1,000 tiny stars.